The auditorium was electric, the kind of energy that made your heart race and your palms sweat. I stood in the shadows, just out of sight, my breath hitching as the crowd erupted in cheers. On stage, Leo, the golden boy of the music scene, was basking in the spotlight, his voice smooth and inviting, weaving through the melody like silk. I could see the way the audience swayed, lost in the spell he cast. But beneath that surface, my own heart was a storm. In my pocket, I felt the weight of the small device, the proof of everything that had been crumbling in my life. I had never imagined I would be here, not as a spectator but as a silent puppeteer, ready to pull the strings. My hands trembled slightly as I clutched the audio recording, the sounds of whispered secrets and stolen moments forever etched in my mind. It had been a month since I discovered the truth, Clara, my wife, wrapped up in the arms of this young musician. I replayed that moment in my head, how it shattered my world with a single revelation. But tonight, I wasn't here to grieve. I was here to settle a score. The lights dimmed further, and Leo's voice rose higher, captivating the audience even more. I could hear their gasps, their sighs of admiration, and I thought about how much they didn't know. They were cheering for a man who had taken everything from me. I had imagined confronting him 100 times, loud, dramatic, the truth spilling out like venom. But that wasn't the plan now. I slipped further into the shadows, the anticipation coiling in my stomach like a snake. I couldn't help but wonder if Clara was in the crowd, her eyes glistening with admiration for Leo, unaware of the truth that was about to unfold. I wanted to ruin him, not just for the betrayal, but for the way he made her feel, alive, free, wanted. As the final notes of his song faded, the applause erupted, drowning out the chaos inside my mind. Leo took a bow, flashing that charming smile that had undoubtedly swept Clara off her feet. But that smile would be gone soon enough. Tonight, it was my turn to orchestrate a scene worthy of the finest drama. I pulled out the recording device, my finger hovering over the play button. The crowd was still cheering, oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond their joy. I steadied my breath, a mixture of anger and satisfaction coursing through me. This was the moment. This was the reckoning. As the echoes of betrayal rang in my ears, my mind drifted back to a time when happiness felt effortless, when Clara and I were a team, a perfect pair navigating life together. I could almost see us laughing under the warm sun, the world spread out before us like a blank canvas. We used to spend lazy afternoons in the park, her laughter like music, blending harmoniously with the rustle of leaves. I'd often sneak glances at her, captivated by the way her hair danced in the breeze, the way her eyes sparkled with mischief. Those moments felt infinite, filled with promise and love. We dreamed about our future and discussed everything from travel plans to the kind of house we'd want, our hearts intertwined in every conversation. Then came that night, the night Clara met Leo at that local gig. I'd been excited for her, encouraging her to explore her passions, never imagining it would lead to this spiral of betrayal. I remember how she came home that evening, her cheeks flushed with excitement, recounting stories about the charismatic young musician. I had smiled, genuinely happy for her, blissfully unaware of what was to come. But the enchantment faded. Slowly I started to notice the changes. Clara became distant, her laughter less frequent. The late-night texts and phone calls became more frequent, and I brushed aside my doubts, convincing myself it was all in my head. After all, she was my partner, my confidant. I couldn't imagine she would betray me, not after everything we'd built together. Yet the warmth of our shared moments began to feel like a distant memory, overshadowed by the cold reality of her infidelity. I often found myself retracing the steps of our past, searching for the signs I had missed, wondering where I had gone wrong. How did we go from spontaneous road trips to a house filled with silence and secrets? Now, as I stood in the shadows, the vibrant sounds of Leo's performance contrasting sharply with the memories flooding my mind, I felt a mix of anger and longing. I wished I could go back to those moments, back to the days when Clara's smile lit up my world. But that was gone, replaced by the shadows of deception. This was my turning point. I could no longer dwell in the past. The love we had built together had crumbled, and all that remained was a burning desire for retribution. I clenched my fists, ready to ensure Leo would pay for the happiness he had stolen from me. The echoes of our past no longer brought comfort, they fueled my resolve. It was an ordinary Tuesday when my world began to unravel. I had just settled into the couch, the familiar hum of the evening news filling the room, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark, my old college friend. We hadn't spoken in a while, but his name immediately caught my attention. "Hey Den, just saw Clara at a cafe with some guy. He looked young, really charming, could be a musician. Just thought you should know." My heart dropped. I stared at the screen, disbelief washing over me. Clara? With someone else? I thought about Mark, how he'd never be the type to exaggerate. My gut twisted as the implications settled in. I had always trusted Clara, but now I felt the first tremors of doubt. I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom as I read and reread the message. What if it was true? My mind raced back to all those late nights when she was working late, the subtle changes in her demeanor that I had brushed off. All those moments began to stack up, a tower of doubts teetering on the edge of collapse. I needed answers. I couldn't just sit there frozen in shock. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, the chill of the evening air biting against my skin as I made my way to the cafe. Each step felt like a march towards my execution, the reality of what I might discover sending shivers down my spine. As I entered the cafe, the smell of coffee mixed with the sound of laughter hit me like a freight train. My eyes scanned the room, and then I saw them. Clara, her head thrown back in laughter, her eyes sparkling as she spoke to a young man whose face I didn't recognize. It was Leo. The moment froze. Time seemed to warp, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. I stood there, rooted to the spot, heart racing. They leaned closer, and I felt a sickening churn in my stomach as I watched her touch his arm, her laughter ringing like a taunt. I fought the urge to confront them right then and there. The scene felt surreal, like watching a film unfold in slow motion. I turned away, my breath quickening, and rushed out of the cafe, my mind reeling. The chill of the evening air did nothing to numb the fire building within me. Betrayal stung deeper than any physical blow. I stumbled home, each step feeling heavier than the last, the weight of my shattered trust dragging me down. When I finally collapsed onto the couch, I felt utterly hollow. The laughter I had just witnessed echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder of everything I had lost. Clara's smile, once a beacon of joy, now felt like a dagger, twisting deeper into my heart with each memory of happier times. At that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't let this betrayal define me. I would find a way to take back control. Leo may have taken my wife, but he wouldn't take my dignity. I would make sure he paid for every moment of deceit, every stolen glance that should have been mine. The gears of revenge began to turn in my mind, and I welcomed the dark path ahead. Sitting in the dim light of my living room, the reality of Clara's betrayal gnawed at me like a relentless parasite. Anger surged within me, but instead of confronting them, exposing the truth and risking a scene, I found a more insidious plan forming in my mind. I would ruin Leo, dismantle his budding career piece by piece, and in doing so make him feel the pain I had endured. I took a deep breath and began to map out my strategy. Revenge would require precision, patience, and above all, secrecy. I could already see the headline, "Rising Star Falls from Grace." But first, I needed to gather information and build a solid case against him that would leave no room for doubt. The first step was surveillance. I couldn't just rely on Mark's brief glimpse, I needed to see the full picture. I began following Clara and Leo, documenting their meetings under the guise of routine errands. It was unsettling, but each sighting only fueled my determination. I would take notes, record their conversations, and find a way to gather enough evidence to make my case irrefutable. As I sat in my car outside their favorite spots, cafes, bars, and even music venues, I watched them laugh and flirt, oblivious to my presence. I felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of their happiness. Each interaction stoked the fire of my resolve, and with each day the plan took clearer shape. Next, I needed to infiltrate the local music scene. I reached out to old contacts and started attending open mic nights and music festivals, all while keeping an eye on Leo's performances. I positioned myself in the right places, making casual conversations with musicians, producers, and even fans. I learned about Leo's influences, his connections, and the vulnerabilities in his rising career. I discovered that Leo had been trying to land a record deal, and whispers about his personal life could easily derail that ambition. I made mental notes of every conversation, each rumor, and every weakness I could exploit. I started to build a network, aligning myself with those who could help turn the tide against him. As the days turned into weeks, I honed my plan. I would find a way to expose the affair publicly, but not in a way that would lead back to me. The key would be timing, an unsuspecting moment when the truth would land with maximum impact. I decided to target Leo's next concert, a big event that was sure to attract a crowd and media attention. I knew it would be the perfect stage for my revenge. The venue would be packed with fans, journalists, and industry insiders, all eager to witness the rise of the next big thing. But what they would witness instead would be his downfall. I began to brainstorm ways to ensure that the evidence of their affair would be released at just the right moment. An audio recording played through the venue's sound system, the truth laid bare in front of an audience that had adored him. It was cruel, but it felt justified. As I plotted and planned, the weight of my anger transformed into a chilling satisfaction. I was no longer a victim of betrayal, I was the architect of Leo's destruction. The thought alone sent a thrill down my spine, and I knew there was no turning back. I was committed to this path, ready to embrace the darkness for the sake of my vindication. As I delved deeper into my plan, crafting each detail with surgical precision, a strange thing began to happen. Amidst the rage and determination to destroy Leo, I found myself haunted by memories of Clara, those fleeting moments when laughter filled our home and our connection felt unbreakable. Late one evening, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. I paused on a picture from our last vacation together. Clara, sun-kissed and radiant, her head thrown back in laughter as I attempted to capture the perfect shot. At that moment, she was everything I had ever wanted. The joy in her eyes mirrored my own, and for a brief instant, I could almost forget the betrayal. But the warmth of nostalgia was quickly swallowed by the cold reality of our current situation. How could I still feel this way about her? After everything she had done, every lie she had spun, a part of me remained inexplicably tethered to her. I tried to push those feelings aside, focusing instead on the task at hand, but they kept resurfacing, relentless and uninvited. The more I observed Clara and Leo together, the more conflicted I felt. I watched her at those cafes, her laughter brightening the room, but it was no longer meant for me. I felt like a voyeur in my own life, yearning for a connection that now seemed permanently severed. Each encounter left me with a hollow ache, a reminder of what I had lost. It dawned on me that my desire for revenge was not just about punishing Leo. It was also about reclaiming a part of Clara that I feared I might never get back. I longed for the intimacy we once shared, the late-night conversations that would stretch into dawn. But now, those moments felt like distant echoes, taunting me with their absence. One evening, as I sat in my car outside a bar where Clara and Leo were set to meet, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. I should have felt angry, but instead I felt a profound sadness. What had I become? A man fueled by bitterness, clinging to the ruins of a love that had been so vibrant? At that moment, I made a choice. I realized that if I continued down this path seeking only revenge, I might lose the last remnants of the love I still felt for Clara. I could take down Leo, but what would that achieve? Would it bring Clara back to me, or would it simply deepen the divide between us? I took a deep breath, my mind racing. Perhaps there was still a way to confront her, to find out if there was any chance for us, if the love we had could be rekindled, even after the betrayal. I didn't want to be just a shadow in her life, consumed by anger and revenge. I wanted clarity. With a newfound resolve, I decided to reach out to Clara, to talk. No scheming, no hidden agendas, just an honest conversation about everything that had happened, and perhaps a chance to understand if what we had could ever be salvaged. It was a risk, but in that moment, I realized that love was worth fighting for, even if it meant facing the pain head-on. I could feel the weight of anticipation in the air as I paced my living room, rehearsing what I wanted to say to Clara. The prospect of confronting her both thrilled and terrified me. Would she lash out? Would she deny everything? Or perhaps, deep down, she still felt something for me. I had to know. Finally, I sent her a text asking her to meet. I chose a quiet cafe, the same one where I had seen her with Leo. As I arrived, I found a corner table, my heart racing with every passing second. I could already picture her walking in, that familiar smile on her face, and I braced myself for the truth. When Clara entered, I felt a pang of nostalgia. She looked beautiful as always, but the light in her eyes felt dimmed, clouded by secrets. She spotted me and approached with a tentative smile, but I could see the unease in her posture. "Hey Den, what's up?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from me. I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. "We need to talk, about you and Leo." Her expression shifted, a fleeting flicker of panic crossing her face before she composed herself. "What do you mean?" I leaned forward, my voice steady. "I know about the affair, Clara. Mark saw you. I've seen you together. You can't hide this from me anymore." Her gaze dropped, and I watched as she fidgeted with her coffee cup. "Den, it's not what you think." "Then what is it? Because it sure looks like you've moved on without me. You were the one who told me everything was fine." I felt the frustration bubbling to the surface. Clara glanced around the cafe as if checking for eavesdroppers. "Please, let's not do this here. It's complicated." "Complicated?" I echoed, incredulity washing over me. "You call cheating complicated? This isn't just some misunderstanding, Clara. You made a choice. You chose him." She sighed, her defenses beginning to crack. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened. I was confused and Leo made me feel alive again. I didn't want to hurt you, but I didn't know how to handle everything." I leaned back, the sting of her words hitting me like a physical blow. So you admit it, you were looking for something outside our marriage. What does that say about us? Clara's expression shifted from defiance to guilt, and I saw the turmoil in her eyes. I didn't want it to come to this. I care about you, Den. I always have. But I was lost. Lost? I shot back. You think running into the arms of another man is the answer? Did you even consider how this would affect me? Us? She looked down again, unable to meet my gaze. I was just trying to escape, I thought I could find myself again. I never meant for it to go this far. The silence that hung between us was heavy, laden with unspoken words and broken trust. I could feel my heart racing, the urgency of the moment pressing down on us. Is there any chance for us, Clara? Is there a future, or have you already made your choice? Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought I saw hope flicker in her gaze, but then she seemed to retreat, a shield forming around her heart. I don't know, Den. I don't. I need time to figure things out. That answer hit me like a slap. Time? What does that mean? You want to keep Leo in the picture while you figure things out? I'm not trying to hurt you. I need to think, she stammered, her voice trembling. I felt a mix of anger and sadness swell within me. So that's it? You're not willing to fight for us? You're just going to walk away? Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly blinked them back. I'm sorry, Den. I never wanted this, but I can't give you an answer right now. As she spoke, I felt the last remnants of hope slipping away. I didn't want to let her go, but I couldn't keep holding on to someone who was so unsure. I need you to be honest with me, Clara. Do you still love me? For a heartbeat, time stood still. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words never came. Instead, she looked away, and at that moment, I knew that whatever future we had was now clouded by uncertainty, tainted by betrayal. I think we both need some space, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, tears threatening to spill over, and I realized that this was it. I had come to find answers, but all I had found was more pain. The days turned into weeks, and as I plotted my revenge against Leo, my obsession began to consume me. What started as a means of coping with betrayal transformed into an all-encompassing mission. I found myself isolating from friends, retreating into a world where the only thing that mattered was the downfall of the man who had taken Clara from me. One evening, I met up with Mark and a couple of other friends at our usual bar. They greeted me with half-hearted smiles, but I could see the concern etched on their faces. As we settled into our seats, I could feel their eyes on me, like hawks watching their prey. Hey man, how've you been? Mark asked, his tone casual but his gaze probing. I shrugged, trying to mask the tension bubbling beneath the surface. Just keeping busy, you know how it is. Busy with what? Another friend, Alex, chimed in, his brow furrowed. You've been kind of Mia lately. I waved it off, eager to shift the conversation. Just working on some projects. Nothing to worry about. But they weren't convinced. You sure it's nothing? Mark pressed, leaning in closer. You seem different, like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. I felt my jaw tighten. I'm fine, just dealing with some personal stuff. Alex exchanged a glance with Mark, and I could see the silent communication passing between them. Look, Dan, Mark said carefully, we're your friends. You can talk to us, but it feels like you're spiraling into something dark. Dark? I scoffed, irritation flaring. You have no idea what I'm dealing with. Maybe not, Mark replied, his voice steady. But we've noticed how fixated you are on Leo. It's like you're letting this obsession take over your life. Is this healthy? I felt a rush of defensiveness. He hurt me, Mark. He took everything from me. Don't you think I have a right to feel this way? Of course you do, Alex interjected, his tone calm but firm. But vengeance won't heal your wounds. It's only going to make things worse. You could end up losing yourself in this. I glanced around the bar, suddenly aware of the laughter and chatter surrounding us. It felt distant, like I was in a bubble separate from everyone else. You don't understand. It's not just about revenge. It's about making sure he pays for what he did. Mark sighed, frustration creeping into his voice. And what about Clara? What happens when she finds out? Do you think this will fix anything? You could push her further away. That struck a nerve. My mind raced as I recalled my earlier conversation with Clara, her tears, her hesitation. I just want her to see what he is, I said, my voice wavering. I want her to realize she made a mistake. But at what cost? Mark countered, his gaze unwavering. You risk losing her for good. You're focused on this vendetta and ignoring the bigger picture. What if it backfires? I clenched my fists, battling the storm of emotions raging within me. I don't care about the consequences right now. I just want justice. Alex leaned back, crossing his arms. Look, man, we care about you. But this path you're on, it's not going to end well. You're better than this. Don't let anger dictate your actions. I fell silent, their words washing over me like a wave of cold reality. Deep down I knew they were right. But the anger, the pain, it felt too consuming to let go of. I had been so focused on revenge that I had lost sight of what I truly wanted. Just think about it, okay? Mark said gently, his voice softer now. We're here for you no matter what, but you need to take a step back and consider what you want. Is this the person you want to be? As they continued to talk, I felt a flicker of doubt ignite within me. Maybe they were right, maybe I was losing myself in this obsession. But at that moment the rage felt like my only lifeline, a way to channel my hurt into something tangible. For now, I would keep my plans close to my chest. I didn't want to burden my friends with the darker thoughts swirling in my mind. But I couldn't shake the feeling that their warnings were more than just concern. They were a reflection of my own growing uncertainty. As the night wore on, I found myself caught in a battle between revenge and redemption, unsure of which path I would ultimately choose. The day of Leo's concert arrived, and I felt an exhilarating mix of nerves and anticipation coursing through my veins. This was it, the culmination of weeks spent meticulously planning every detail. I could almost taste the satisfaction of revenge, but I also felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. I arrived at the venue early, blending in with the crowd of eager fans. The energy was electric, everyone buzzing with excitement for what they believed would be a night to remember. But for me it was about so much more. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the task ahead. I had spent the past few days crafting a plausible excuse to gain access to the backstage area. I'd managed to secure a pass by posing as a freelance audio technician, claiming I was there to help with sound checks. The plan felt precarious, but I was determined. As I approached the entrance, I could hear the muffled sounds of the band warming up. I flashed my badge at the security guard, who scrutinized me for a moment before waving me through. My heart raced as I stepped into the buzzing backstage area, filled with equipment, crew members, and the smell of adrenaline. I made my way toward the sound booth where the head technician was busy making adjustments. I introduced myself, trying to appear calm and professional. Hey, I'm here to assist with the audio setup. Just got in from another gig. He nodded, not paying me much mind. As he turned his back to adjust the mixing console, I seized my chance. I discreetly pulled out the small recording device I had hidden in my pocket. The plan was simple. I would connect it to the sound system and play the recording at the right moment, just as Leo took the stage. I located the auxiliary input and carefully plugged it into my device. The concert began with an explosion of sound and light, the crowd erupting in cheers as Leo took the stage, his presence magnetic. He strummed the opening chords of his latest hit, the energy in the room crackling with excitement. Fans sang along, their voices rising in unison, fully immersed in the moment, oblivious to the storm that was about to break. As I stood in the shadows backstage, my heart raced. This was it. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me, electrifying every nerve. The atmosphere was intoxicating, but my focus remained sharp. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment, and now I was ready to unleash the truth. Leo's charisma shone brightly as he engaged the crowd, but my mind was elsewhere. With each passing second, I felt the weight of the recording in my pocket. The evidence of betrayal poised to shatter his carefully crafted image. As the chorus of his song reached a fever pitch, I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. I knew the exact moment to strike. When Leo hit the high note that sent the crowd into a frenzy, I pressed the button on my device. The music cut out abruptly, replaced by the raw sound of my recording. A shocked silence fell over the audience as they processed the sudden shift. My voice filled the air, clear and deliberate, revealing the intimate moments between Clara and Leo. The laughter, the whispered secrets, the betrayal that had driven me to this point. Gasps rippled through the crowd, disbelief etched on every face. I could see Leo's expression change from joy to confusion, then horror as the realization dawned on him. He stepped back from the mic, desperate to regain control, but the damage was done. "Is this real?" someone shouted, and the murmur of confusion swelled into a chorus of incredulity. The audience was torn between their love for the music and the shocking betrayal unfolding before them. I felt a surge of power, but it quickly faded, replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. As the recording continued, the atmosphere shifted from shock to anger. "Get off the stage," someone yelled, and soon the crowd joined in. A tidal wave of outrage directed at the man who had captivated them just moments before. The cheers morphed into boos, a cacophony of disbelief filling the venue. I stood back, observing the chaos I had unleashed. Part of me felt exhilarated. This was my revenge, manifesting in real time. But another part of me was paralyzed by fear. What would happen to Clara? I spotted her in the crowd, her face paling as the truth sunk in. I had thrown her into the fray, exposing our lives for the world to see, and I had no idea how she would react. Leo, realizing he had lost the crowd, attempted to salvage his reputation. "Wait, this isn't what it seems," he shouted into the mic, his voice barely cutting through the uproar. But the crowd was no longer listening. They were consumed by anger and betrayal, demanding accountability for the man who had deceived them. As the recording finally came to an end, silence fell over the venue, but it was quickly shattered by the furious outcries of the audience. Leo's once charming facade crumbled, replaced by a desperate plea for understanding. I stepped back, retreating further into the shadows as the crowd surged forward, their voices rising in a chaotic blend of shouts and accusations. I felt a mix of satisfaction and dread. I had executed my plan flawlessly, but now as I looked at Clara standing amid the chaos, her expression a tumultuous blend of heartbreak and fury, I realized that my quest for revenge had ignited a fire that threatened to consume us both. As the chaos unfolded, Leo stood at the center of the storm, his once captivating presence now reduced to desperation. The crowd's fury escalated, and I could see him grasping for control, his mind racing as he processed the enormity of what had just happened. Fans who had once adored him now shouted accusations, their voices laced with betrayal. "Leo, you're a fraud," someone yelled, and the crowd roared in agreement, their excitement transformed into righteous anger. It was a visceral reaction, the kind that sends shivers down your spine. I watched from the shadows, my heart pounding as I witnessed the unraveling of a man who had built his entire career on a foundation of lies. "Listen to me," Leo pleaded, his voice cracking under the weight of their disdain. "This isn't what you think. It was a mistake, a misunderstanding," but the audience wasn't having it. They had invested their emotions in his music, only to find out he was hiding a darker truth. "You lied to us. You used us." The chorus of shouts grew louder, drowning out his attempts at damage control. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and dread. I had orchestrated this moment, yet the reality of watching someone's life fall apart was overwhelming. Leo had been my rival, but he was still a human being, and the fallout from this betrayal would ripple far beyond this night. Clara stood at the edge of the crowd, her face a mask of shock and heartbreak. I could see the pain in her eyes as she grappled with the reality of what was unfolding. I had intended to expose Leo, but in doing so, I had also exposed our relationship, our vulnerabilities, and now it felt like both our lives were on display. As Leo continued to plead, I felt a surge of anger rising within me. "You think you can just talk your way out of this?" I shouted, stepping forward into the light, the tension thickening as all eyes turned toward me. "You've deceived everyone, including Clara. You think you can escape the consequences of your actions?" "Dan," Clara shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't, this isn't the answer." Her eyes were pleading, filled with both fear and anger, and for a moment I hesitated. I could see the toll this was taking on her, and I felt a flicker of doubt about whether I was doing the right thing. But Leo's expression ignited the fire within me again. "You're just a jealous nobody," he spat, his anger boiling over as he faced me. "You think this will make you feel better? You're ruining everything." "Everything you built was a lie," I shot back, the crowd murmuring in agreement. "You think your charm and talent can cover up the betrayal? Look at them." I gestured to the audience, their faces twisted in anger. "You've lost their trust, and now you're nothing but a fraud." Leo's bravado wavered as he realized the gravity of the situation. The cheers of adoration had been replaced by a chorus of outrage, and with each passing moment, his reputation crumbled further. I could see the realization dawn on him. This was not just a temporary setback, it was a complete unraveling. As the crowd surged forward, chanting for him to leave the stage, I felt a sense of vindication. The music that had once defined him was now a haunting reminder of his lies. But in my triumph, I couldn't shake the feeling that the fallout would extend beyond Leo. Clara's gaze shifted between us, her heart torn. I knew she was grappling with her own emotions, with the weight of my actions and the truth of her choices. The tension hung thick in the air, a volatile mix of anger, betrayal, and unresolved feelings. At that moment, as Leo struggled to regain his footing amidst the chaos, I understood that this confrontation was only the beginning. The fallout from this night would echo far beyond the stage, reshaping our lives in ways I could never have predicted. And as I stood there, caught between revenge and remorse, I realized that the path ahead was uncertain, both for me and Clara. As the uproar began to quiet and the crowd thinned, I stood frozen in the aftermath of my actions, my mind racing. I had executed my plan flawlessly. Leo's career lay in tatters, his reputation shattered before thousands of witnesses. But as I watched the chaos unfold, An oppressive sense of emptiness settled in my chest, suffocating any remnants of satisfaction I had hoped to feel. What had I truly achieved? I had set out to expose Leo, to make him pay for his betrayal, but in doing so, I had also destroyed the fragile trust that remained between Clara and me. The fallout from this night was more extensive than I had anticipated, and as the adrenaline drained from my system, a wave of regret crashed over me. I glanced toward Clara, who stood amidst the departing concert-goers, her face a mix of anguish and disbelief. I wanted to reach out to her, to explain my actions and the pain that had driven me to this point, but I knew that words could do little to mend the rift I had created. The betrayal she felt was compounded by my choice to air our private lives, exposing not only Leo's deceit but also our vulnerability. The atmosphere was heavy with disappointment and betrayal, and I could sense the crowd's shifting mood. Once adoring fans now whispered among themselves, their excitement replaced by confusion and disillusionment. I had not just torn down Leo's image, I had tainted the very music that had once brought them joy, leaving a bitter taste in their mouths. As the last echoes of shouts faded, reality began to settle in. My desire for revenge had seemed so clear-cut in the planning stages, but now I faced the murky waters of its aftermath. I had succeeded in my quest, but it had cost me dearly. My heart ached at the thought of losing Clara for good. The thrill of watching Leo's downfall had morphed into a haunting realization. I had hoped that witnessing his ruin would somehow heal my wounds, but instead, it deepened them. As I approached Clara, I noticed the hurt in her eyes, a painful reflection of my turmoil. I had wanted her to see the truth about Leo, to understand the extent of his betrayal. But I hadn't considered the impact this exposure would have on her. "Clara," I began, my voice shaky, but she turned away, tears welling in her eyes, shimmering like fragile glass. "Dan, I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "You went too far. I loved you, and I still do. But what you did, it changed everything." Her words struck me like a blow, resonating deep within my chest. I had been so consumed by my desire for revenge that I had forgotten about the love we once shared. I had pushed her away, and now I stood at a crossroads, between the intoxicating allure of continued vengeance and the arduous path of rebuilding what we had lost. The air hung thick with tension as I contemplated my next move. Revenge had brought me nothing but sorrow. It hadn't restored my dignity or my sense of self. All it had done was deepen the chasm between Clara and me, a gap that felt insurmountable at this moment. "I'm so sorry," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, trembling with remorse. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I wanted you to see the truth." Clara looked at me, her expression a storm of pain and understanding. "But the truth came at a cost, Dan, a cost I don't know if I can pay." At that moment, I understood the gravity of my actions. I had a choice to make. I could continue down this destructive path, relishing the hollow victory of revenge. Or, I could confront the messy reality of my decisions and attempt to mend our relationship. The prospect of facing the consequences of my actions was daunting, but I realized that I had to try for the sake of the love we once had. "I can't take back what I did," I said, my voice firm yet trembling, "but I need you to know that it wasn't just about Leo. It was about the pain I felt, the betrayal that I thought I could never escape. I was blinded by anger, and I see now how that anger affected you." Clara's eyes softened slightly, a flicker of understanding breaking through her hurt. "I get that you were hurt, but revenge doesn't fix anything. It only creates more pain. We both know that." "I know," I replied, desperation creeping into my voice. "I thought this would give me closure, but all it's done is create a void between us. I've lost sight of what truly matters." As I spoke, I felt the weight of my mistakes pressing down on me. I had spent so long fixated on Leo's betrayal that I had neglected the fragility of my relationship with Clara. I could see it now, the love we had shared, the laughter, the dreams we had built together. They felt so distant, overshadowed by the wreckage I had created. "I don't want to lose you, Clara," I admitted, my voice breaking. "I want to rebuild what we had if you'll let me. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to put in the work." Clara hesitated, her expression torn between hope and caution. "It won't happen overnight, Dan. Trust is not easily rebuilt, especially after everything that's happened." "I understand," I said, my heart racing at the prospect of a second chance. "But I want to try. I want to earn back your trust, to show you that I can be better than I was." This whole ordeal has made me realize what's truly important. The tension between us lingered, but there was a glimmer of possibility. As I stood there, caught in the weight of my past actions and the uncertainty of our future, I knew I had to confront the path ahead. Not just for Leo, but for Clara and myself. With a deep breath, I took a step forward, ready to embrace the difficult journey of healing. I chose the possibility of redemption over the hollow victory of revenge. Hopeful that perhaps we could find a way to rebuild our lives together, stronger and more united than before. The road would be long, but as I looked into Clara's eyes I felt a flicker of hope. Hope that love could triumph over betrayal and that together we could forge a new beginning.